The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
The best ideas are free with Ben Young from Bwaggy.com.
BWAGY.com. Ben Young is back with some inspiration on a Monday morning. G'day there, Ben.
Good morning.
A moving weekend, was it?
Yes, we moved house.
Oh, it wasn't just because you went to Christmas in the park or something like that?
No, just moving house.
Emotional? Okay, right.
You're not that moving. Physical moving.
Yeah.
And it was very much that, the heat and all. I tell you, my southern blood hasn't yet acclimatised to Auckland. I've been here 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But the heat still really gets to me.
Especially if you're up and down stairs with carrying furniture.
Heavy boxes. And by volume, and this is what I found packing over the last few months, about 2/3 of my all the stuff that I own by volume is books.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Because I don't own much furniture. Well, I'm fast acquiring furniture, but at that point in time, most of my stuff is books. And it's tough up and downstairs.
And I mean, you've got a Kindle these days, so you're doing a lot of reading on that.
I've swapped to Kindle.
Yeah.
Probably at the moment 2 out of 3 book purchases are on the Kindle these days. Getting a book every couple of weeks.
You can't really weigh bits and bytes, can you?
No, but also I can get books before they turn up here. Tony Hawk brought out his book, I think it's called How to Skate and Be a CEO, and I got that on the day of launch.
Huh.
There's a couple of other books. Chris Gillibo's The Art of Nonconformity. Yeah. His book. It's going to take 6 weeks to get to New Zealand, so I picked up a copy on the Kindle.
Straight away.
Yeah.
Easy.
So it's quite handy. And I'm actually getting quite used to paying $13, $14 for a new book. I know you're not getting the physical copy, but when you compare for the same book, it's probably $35, $40 in New Zealand. It's not too bad.
If not more. Yeah, absolutely. Well, today we're talking about, and it's a good time to talk about that as we head towards Christmas, pop-up stores.
Yeah, so pop-up stores, it's a bit of a new phenomenon. It's been happening since about 2004, but the recession has really kicked it off. And basically, a pop-up store is a store that pops up in a retail space for a period of time, then it disappears. It's not there permanently, it's there just for a temporary point in time. HP and Microsoft have launched a temporary pop-up store in central Auckland. It's called 10 O'Connell, and I found this out while doing a bit of research on local pop-up stores. And it's just there for 8 weeks, and the idea for them is it's to showcase technology and how HP and Microsoft technology works together to help improve your lifestyle.
Is that something, do you think, they can't adequately do in a normal retail environment?
I think they can, but its purpose is to involve the local community in what they're trying to share, and it's probably something that doesn't last over time. But also having a pop-up store, and this is a good point, is if you were to have a permanent store which showcased technology, maybe you couldn't afford the best retail space. With a pop-up store, knowing you're only doing it for a couple of months, you can probably pay a bit more. It's
interesting, isn't it? Because the Sony stores, I remember when they started a number of years ago, there was a lot of buzz about them, and they were always seemed to be very busy on the weekends because people were like, ooh, a showroom of technology. But that's, whenever you go in there these days, it's tapered off a fair bit, isn't it?
Yeah, so a good point that's been demonstrated in Europe is that with a pop-up store, you can bring digital products that we engage with all the time almost to real life and show off that innovation in a short burst of time, which creates some exclusivity, some excitement.
And novelty, isn't it?
Yeah. It's only there for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So people, EasyJet has done it to launch. When they launch in new territories, they'll set up a pop-up store to create some excitement and show a new novel place to hang out.
As opposed to the Mac store, which is always busy though. The novelty never seems to wear off.
Yeah, that's interesting. Mac, especially in the States, they invest a lot in creating the world's best retail environment.
Yeah.
And they've definitely done that with their revenue per square foot, I think, is it's almost double what the next closest competitor is. It's like $1,200 or $1,400 US per square foot.
Feels like a permanent pop-up store that works, isn't it?
What they did is, not many people know this, they had this big warehouse, and they kept building and rebuilding Apple stores for about 9 months until Steve Jobs and the product development team were happy that this is the concept that could represent them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of trial and error that's gone into that.
Yeah. Are there any other sort of examples other than sort of technology? And you had the EasyJet example there. But
all along Ponsonby Road, and I've seen it a little bit in Newmarket too. Fashion stores, they do a bit of pop-up store to launch a new summer line, because then you can have your launch party there and then be open for 2 weeks whilst people tell one another.
True.
And if you're an indie label or a new label, you can't really afford a retail presence for a full year. It's so expensive. But you can probably afford it for a month or a few weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a great way for them to launch.
There's also pop-up stores within existing stores as well. Like especially in I noticed that in fashion, where suddenly one brand will take over a whole corner just for a very short time.
Yeah, so that's a great example. I was looking at one in the UK. I was on Springwise. It's called Ice Creamers, and they launched in a department store. I think Ridges. I forget the exact name. And they had exclusive ice creams like Sex Pistols ice cream. And the only way to do it was go to the department store and get the ice cream.
Right.
So that's a great way of kind of leveraging off existing traffic within a department store or any other store. But also it's a nice way for that store to generate some more income, especially if things are a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Because they've got so much retail space, why not sublease some of it? So yeah, it's a really good idea, launching within.
Yeah. And pop-up bars were sort of popular for a wee while. Pop-up restaurants as well?
Yes, in New York they're doing a big push for pop-up cafes in sidewalks or certain areas which aren't used that much, as a way of creating more street culture in New York. I'm sure we'll see a lot more of that in New Zealand. I think I was talking a few weeks back with you, Glenn, about pop-up bars. The new strategy for bars is to create a pop-up bar that only exists for a few months in a novel space, and really create that cool experience that can spread virally.
Yeah, it's been happening in larger cities for a wee while now, in London and New York.
It would be good to see it locally. I'm sure it'll be here quite soon.
I've heard about restaurants, but pop-up restaurants in people's houses. Actual well-known chefs.
I haven't heard this.
Well-known chefs doing it in out in the suburbs, and you won't know until sort of the last minute, but you've got to be on a list where they invite you.
That's cool. That's cool. And it's all about creating a cool experience, but making an experience out of a product that you wouldn't normally give so much attention. Like the fact that it's there for a few months. The mini store on Ponsonby Road, I believe, is a pop-up store. It's only there for a year.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's a great example of prime real estate that hadn't been used. That piece of land has been empty for quite some time.
It's funny because, so this is on Ponsonby Road in Auckland. The building looks like it was almost purpose-made for Mini, though, doesn't it? It's got a Mini hanging upside down inside it.
It was made by German engineers. They prefabricated it in Germany, then came across and built it. So it has to fit in with all the brand guidelines.
So could that... because that building just completely disappear in a year, and they'd build something else.
I think so. The plan might have changed, but my initial reading when it first launched was that it was a pop-up store, and it's not a temporary. It's not a permanent structure.
Oh, okay.
So we shall see. But they've done exactly what a pop-up store is good for. They've launched in a place where launching a car yard on expensive retail land, you wouldn't normally do that. You've created some excitement, a new experience. I've put a cafe on there, and they're having competition down there at the moment where they've got people trying to live in a Mini for 5 days.
Yeah.
They've created a real hub of activity, and that's the point of the pop-up
And
store.
would you say that's particularly for Christchurch? That's the opportunity right now with the landscape and the CBD all changing and everything, to create buzz in the central city by popping up with all sorts of weird and wonderful things.
But it would be perfect for Christchurch, especially if there's a lot of retail space which is now empty. It's a great way to utilise it, great way to put some money into the economy, but it's also good to stimulate foot traffic. It's almost like a market day, but for retail.
It does, isn't it? Yeah.
That's interesting.
All right, well, you can continue the conversation with Ben at bwaggy.com, bwaggy.com, also on Twitter as well. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.